Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Acosta. I am a non-religious licensed minister. And today we're going to be talking about Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, the narrow gate, in a way that you've probably never heard it. I'm pretty sure you've never heard it before. So let's dive into this. I know that many of you here are seeking answers. That's really the only way you can understand this message that I am sharing with you guys and the information and knowledge that I am sharing. It's the only way is if you are truly seeking knowledge and you're seeking to learn and understand and to actually grow and become closer to God and grow from where you're at. It's the only way that you can begin to grasp this, because the majority of people aren't there. They're in a place like the Pharisees. The Pharisees were in a place where they felt like they already knew everything there was to know. So they weren't searching for something. The disciples that Christ chose had already made a choice far before that. And they were already searching, which is why they went and they'd find each other. And Philip went and found Peter and so on and so forth. And they went on finding each other. We found the Messiah, and they were ready. They were hungry. And it's the attention to that hunger that creates a drive in us that makes us focus on what we're looking for and to seek it out. And we have a saying that what you're seeking is seeking you. And it's absolutely true. And let me give you a very interesting example. I went to a seminar once, and while they're talking with a few people that I had just met from all over the world, 88 different countries, the guy sitting next to me began to give a story. Something I said, that I was talking, and a lot of people were listening to me talk. Then he wanted to share a story. The story he shared was fantastic, and it hits the nail on the head. And there's no coincidence. Even in there's no such thing as a coincidence. You have to understand that. But let me explain his story. When this guy was younger, and I may have explained this on a different video, but let me explain it again anyways. When he was younger, he was injured on a motorcycle, and he sold the motorcycle, and a lot of time went by. It was like 30 years went by, and now he was in his 50s, and one day he woke up and he just remembered how it was and how much he loved it, and so he wanted to buy one of those motorcycles again. He wanted to re-ride that. And he went looking, and across the United States he found two. One was close by, and before he could get to it, it was sold. The next one was off in Colorado somewhere, I believe it was, and he lived in Washington. And so he made arrangements to go and pick it up. This is how much he wanted. He drove out there with his truck to go pick this motorcycle up. It was like a 1980s something bike. He went out there and he picked up the bike, took it home. The guy that sold it to him had found it inside one of the barns and took it home, and he got started, and then he went to register it. And when he went to register it, he found that it was his bike. It was still registered to him this entire time. 30 years later, he got the desire for that bike. Any other person, the majority of people, would have ignored that and not done it. And he went out there and he found his specific bike, not knowing that was going to take place. What enlightenment it did to him. Another story. One of my teachers, his son, very awesome guy. They were out in New York, and my teacher had a meeting to go to. And so his son said, well, I'll go ahead and we'll look at the shops out here while you go to the meeting, and I'll be back when you think you're done. Just give me a call. Okay. So he was going down through New York, and he saw a classic car shop. And he had always wanted a convertible black Austin Healey. And he went into the classic car shop, and there sitting was the perfect example of what he wanted. This black Austin Healey, totally restored. He thought it was too much money, and he decided to just leave it there and not go on with the sale about or buying it. And he said, no, it's a lot of money. So he comes out of the car lot and he goes and he meets up with his father and he tells him, you know what I saw? He goes, what's that? He says, well, I saw the black Austin Healey convertible and it's immaculate condition. So why don't you? My teacher says, why don't you buy it? He says, no, it's a lot of money. He says, what? Money just comes and goes. What are you going to use it for? Why don't you get it? He's like, no, it's just gonna. And he all these excuses. Like, why don't you get it? You want it. Why don't you get it? And so he goes and he buys the car. He went in, he bought the car, and they were shipping it to his house, which was in Canada. Now here's going from New York to Canada, right? The interesting part was that he called the guy and said, can you fax over to me? Can you send me all the paperwork for the car so I can have it? And he said, well, I'll email it to you. So he emailed him the paperwork. Come to find out that car that he bought, that is having shipped to his house, that he's always wanted, was manufactured on his birthday. And that day was his birthday. It was his birthday, so he bought it for himself as a birthday gift to himself. And that car was manufactured on his birthday. What are the odds? They're not. That's not. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The odds are unbelievable. Now, I'm sure at some point, some of you have some of these stories. Have stories like this or have heard stories like this. They're not coincidence. They're not. And the thing is that we don't understand what's happening with us. We don't understand the way God works with us. And we think of those things as, well, those are some material object. No. The specificness of it, what it does, the message it imprints on your heart. How is it? Now, they could have easily missed it. He almost didn't buy the car. The other guy had to drive from Washington to Colorado to go pick up the bike. If he didn't even act when he did, he would have never came back in contact with that bike that was his. It became available for sale, and then he got the desire to go look for it and found it. If he would have even acted any bit sooner, he would have got the first bike that was closer to him and would have never came in contact with his original bike. Think about this. Think about how that had to work. Think about how the intricacy. And for him, what he sought found him. And it seems by accident, but I want to show you something. And it starts off in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14. Different than the way we look at it from a church Christian aspect of how we're taught. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few be there that find it. You wonder what that means and how those work together. Well, it's really simple. When we have the desire was strong enough to drive, to push him to go across state lines to go pick up a bike. From the minute they wake up, if they're going to work that day, they're in a routine, right? They're in a routine. They get up. If you mess with the routine, they're going to forget something. They're going to forget their work badge. They're going to forget something that they need to take with them for that work day. On the days that we get up and we have our days off, sometimes people wake up and they sit there on their phone and just look through their phones and there's no purpose of where we are going, right? And that really is like a ship. If you had a ship leaving a harbor and it had no destination, we take away the crew and the captain and there's no destination. We just let it run itself. It's going to run itself amok somewhere, right? It'd be lucky to get out of the harbor without running into other ships. Well, for most of us, that's how our life is. And we can tell that because we're always drawn away by the different thoughts that just flow in and flow out of our minds. They just flow in and flow out of our minds, and it's just one thought, and it leads you to another thought, and then that thought leads you to another thought, and at the end, we're nowhere. And the reason that is because our mind, because it is not focused on any particular place that we are desired to go. We're not in contact with that desire. And God puts those desires in there to lead us away from ourselves, away from our way of thinking, to break the boundaries of what I call the steel pot. Unless we are focused and involved with that desire that God puts on us, our mind is like a channel that's on a TV channel that's on a bunch of snow, or a radio station that's on a bunch of snow, and all it does is receive anything that's on that frequency that's flowing around. And that's exactly what's going on. So you gain all these weird thoughts. Your mind has 16,000 thoughts a day. It is only when you are involved with that desire that you've already made the decision to go after, and you don't know how it's going to happen, that you start to draw down from a different place where God can lead you into a place of growth and development. It's the only way it works. And the steel pot is referenced in this book. And to really understand what the steel pot is, you'd have to go through it to get there. But it is a similarity of growing up. If you've grown up in church for a long time, it's hard to break that steel pot unless you're really hungry. If you're not really hungry, you feel like you already know, like the Pharisees, then you become very objective. And you will hold on to what you believe and what has been inundated within you, no matter how it doesn't add up, no matter how much the results remain the same. And the Lord said, you'll know them by their fruit. Well, the fruit is a result. It's the results that they're getting. We have to become in contact with that in order to be able to go after the different steps that God puts in front of us in order to be able to grow along the journey. It's not about the destination. It's not about the object that you are finally achieving. It's not about that. It is what you unravel within yourself that God put in you from the beginning that unravels along the way. It is in a development, and this whole life for us is a development stage. It really is on the way to the promised land. Now, if they did not have a promised land to go to, they would have become lost. But because they did not change their way of thinking, they did become lost, and they continued going around and around. I asked an atheist about this one time. She said, have you ever noticed that no matter how much money you make, something always comes up to take it? If you have extra money, you made an extra $1,000 this month, and you're like, it gives you a little bit of a breath of fresh air. You have a little bit of room to breathe. And all of a sudden, the car breaks down. And what does it cost? Almost all of that, sometimes even more. Why is that? This atheist guy, he's like, why is that? Why does it happen? That always happens to me. And I watch it happening to other people. Why does that happen? How can that happen? It's like something knows that you have extra money and comes to take it. How does that happen? And it opened up his curiosity. Interesting. We don't understand these things. And that is the steel pot in our thinking, in our way of thinking, and the beliefs that we've taken in. That's why it says in Jeremiah, the heart is deceivingly wicked above all things. Who can know it? It will lead you in a circle. That part of the heart that we're talking about is not the heart like we think. It is the heart where enmity resides. And when it hears a message like the one I'm saying now, it wants to talk. It wants to fight back. It wants to say this and that. It doesn't want to learn. It doesn't want to change. It hates change. And its objective is to keep you within that steel pot. Now, if you were to take an oak seed and put it into a 2-foot steel pot, how long before its growth is stifled? Right? If you put one in the dirt and you put one in a steel pot and you water them the same, how big do you think that little oak tree inside that steel pot is going to grow? It's not going to grow very much. It's never going to develop into the image and the likeness of the seed of the tree that it fell off of, right? As a seed. It's not going to do that. So we have to understand that. So God, if we are that seed within that steel pot, he puts things outside of the steel pot so that we can go after, so we break the barriers of that until we're finally free and in the dirt that we need to be in order to grow like the other tree. Now, a lot of people, the majority of people, we can say easily over 98% will never make that change. They will hear this message and hear this understanding, take it, realize it, and then push it away. And this is the way it works. This is the way it's always fighting you anytime you really want to grow. As long as you're not really going outside the boundaries of that steel pot, it will not fight you. It'll let you read what you want to read. It'll let you listen to this message. It'll let you study the Bible. It will let you do whatever you want to do, so as long as you don't break the barrier. And it is deceivingly wicked. Who can know it? And that means that you really can't figure out. You can't figure out where it's going with what. So the only path that you have is enter in at the straight gate. Narrow is the way. You have to have a focus. You have to have where you're going. You have to know. You have to get involved with an idea. You have to be able to receive that within you. See it and say, you know what? This I'm going to do. This I'm going to do. You'll hear me say this, and I quote, I believe it was, I want to say it was C.S. Lewis that said, all men dream, but not equally. Those that dream by night in the dusty recesses of their mind wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible. This I did. This is what I've been doing. And so I know what I'm talking about. And a lot of times people will hear from God. They'll have a vision. They'll see things. They'll have dreams. But in the day they wake up and nothing has changed. They wake up and it's vanity because nothing happened. It's when it's tangible because it must move from God to me to my environment. From God giving the seed into me, then I implant it into my heart and into my environment. If it never makes it into my environment, then the seed just died. It didn't do anything. Can you imagine if a farmer, you had a corn farmer, and he had 40 acres and he planted 40 acres of corn and only something came up once in a while? The interesting thing about this too is that you cannot take on more than usually 2 things at a time. Anything more than 2, you will fail because it takes a lot of mental concentration. It takes a lot of mental and spiritual coin. And I explain these in these books. Like I said, Let the Answer Sink In. This is the first one. I would read this first, and then The Believer's Guide to Christ in You Manifested. The links will be in the descriptions. Take those in. Read that. Learn it. A lot of Christians will read something or they'll hear something and they'll say, well, I know that. No, you don't know that. Look at the results. You don't know that. You mentally have heard about it, but you don't know that because knowing involves the experience. Get away from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. I was never there. And a lot of times we equate the fact that I've heard about it with the experience, and the experience is nowhere near it. You can have a college student, you can have a student go through college and learn all kinds of things and come out and not be able to do any of it. There is a knowing doing gap. And a lot of people experience it. A lot of people we get 100 people going into college. If we get out of the people that graduate high school, if there's 100 people graduating high school, we might get 20 or 30 going into college. Out of those 30 going to college, by the time they start off, they're going to change their major a few times. Some of them don't even know what it is. They don't even know why they're going. They don't even know why they're there, just other than this is what you do next. Those that actually graduate and then get into the field of what they're studying for or went in with a purpose is very, very, very few. We have to understand these things. We have to understand what's going on here. And that mind, the wide road that leads to destruction, it's not aimed at anything. If you don't aim at anything, if you don't aim at anything, you're going to hit nothing. And it is by that we start to move, that we start to break the boundary. And as we break the boundary, we get closer to God. But as we take that step and we make that achievement, the barrier comes back again. Because the barrier, enmity, doesn't just go away. Enmity is there. Now think about this. Remember this. I'll put enmity between your seed and her seed. What is it? The seed of the five senses, which is on the serpent. It's the outer exterior versus the inner and the interior. The spirit versus the physical aspect. And our conscious mind shifts between the two. It shifts between the two. It's not, we can't say, in reality, they explained it the best they knew. We say that the flesh is enmity against God. That's not correct. It is the conscious mind that resides within the flesh that's enmity against God. It's the conscious mind that resides within the flesh that has taken in ideas and beliefs through the perspective of a physical sense, and has taken that and embedded it here. And enmity uses that to hold you there. Now, from the beginning there, that wasn't supposed to be that way. We have the ability to change this. We have the ability to be redeemed. By his stripes we were healed. By his stripes we can move into the spirit aspect. When he died and when he got up, we get up too. We have to understand these things. We have to understand these things. And I want you to examine your life. Look around at your life. Look at the things that are going on. How long have you been in the same place? How long have you been stuck in the same place? How long have you felt like you can't get ahead? How long do you hear people like, just can't catch a break? How long? Another day, another dollar. How long? How long? When's the last time you really wanted something? And I know that for a lot of people, that's very hard to even think of when's the last time, especially if it's a mother. Oftentimes, mothers will find themselves in a bad situation. They'll go without so that their kid can have some. And we'll say, well, that's a true mother. And well, whether it's a true mother or not true mother, I can understand that. But you're capable of so much more. Christ in you, the hope of glory, is there. We need to grab a hold of that. It's there for a reason. It's there for a purpose. Seeking expression to and through you. That's the only way the glory comes to God. That's the only way the glory comes to the Father. Because look it, you'll know them by their fruit. You'll know them by their fruit. And a lot of times when we hear when the Lord said, those that believe in me and the works that I do, they will do those works also. And greater works than these will they do, because I go unto my Father. And we get caught there, and we want to try to relabel the works so that it fits into the steel pot. Well, that's not the way that works. A lot of the greater works is to learn this so that you can apply this for yourself, so that you can apply this, because people can see that, and then you can eventually show them too. And as we continue to branch out and our lives change and their lives change and your lives change, then their lives will change also. Because that's the way it has to work. See, Christ came and he did things. A lot of people in the Bible, they did things. And we saw that. And we stayed in the background like extras walking around in the back of the movie. Just walking by while the movies are, right? But in this sense, greater works is showing you how to do it, because you can do it. Christ in you. Where's the kingdom? Inside you. The kingdom, what? Suffers violence. Why? The steel pot, enmity, everything trying to keep you right where you're at. And a lot of believers don't know this. A lot of believers will sit there and they'll fight against anything. They'll say, well, miracles have ceased. The word says that miracles have ceased. You have to think. One, in order for miracles to stop, well, harvest time, sowing time, and harvest time. Until Christ comes, right? This will remain. What is the word miracle? The word miracle means, the word miracle is a word that we invented to describe something that we didn't know how it took place. One, now that we know now we understand what's taking place, the word miracle goes away. We don't need that word anymore. Unless you don't know what's happening, you call it a miracle. That, or suddenly God decides to make a change, and God doesn't change. So unless one of those two happened, the miracles don't go away. The miracle goes away because the word, the definition of what it was, is gone. We understand how these things work now. We can understand how this happens. The Lord said, you don't understand my miracles. That means they have an understanding to it. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it. There's a lot of people that are suffering right now. There's a lot of people that want something different. So not everyone's going to take it. Not everyone is going to hear it, because even religion, you'll hear me explain, religion is like a revolving door. And you can show them the narrow gate, and you can put your arm around them and show them the narrow gate and try to, and oh yeah, I see what you're saying. But before they walk all the way through the revolving door and out towards where the destination or where they're going, so that growth can take place, religion and the definition that we have had before will put their arm around them on the other side and roll them right back through the definition of a scripture that they believe and that they know, the way they know it. And they'll be right back. It'll loop them, show them, and then bring them right back. And our minds do that. When you hear what I'm saying, a scripture pops up, and the way you know it pops up, and it revolves you and brings you back to where you're at before. The steel pot is very, very deceiving. It's deceivingly wicked. It really is. And it's engulfed around the heart. And it is applied in so many different ways. More than I can just discuss here in a quick video. But I would definitely look at it here in this book here. And I will talk to you guys later. If you have any comments, any questions, you can comment down below. You can also join my Facebook page and message me through there, and I will gladly help you if that's what you need. All right. God bless. Thank you. Like, subscribe.